Delia Thorne standing in the dimly lit interior of the Last Stop Diner, her family's once thriving roadside eatery. The air smells of stale coffee and mildew, and the flickering neon sign outside casts an eerie red glow through the cracked windows. Delia runs a hand over the dusty counter, her reflection warped in the tarnished chrome of the napkin dispensers. She's back in Hollowbrook after 15 years, forced to confront the town and the diner she swore she'd never return to. A lone trucker stumbles into the diner, his face pale and sweaty. He orders coffee but barely touches it, his hands shaking as he mutters about teeth in the soil and something wrong with the crops. Delia brushes it off as the ramblings of a tired man, but his unease is contagious. Suddenly, the trucker clutches his chest and collapses, writhing on the floor. His skin begins to peel away, revealing tiny, wriggling shapes beneath. He vomits a stream of blackened teeth onto the linoleum, each one clattering like a stone. Delia screams, backing away as the man's body convulses and goes still. As Delia kneels to check the man's pulse, she feels a sharp pain in her palm. She looks down to see a tooth embedded in her skin, its roots squirming like tiny worms. She pulls it out, but it moves, burrowing back into her flesh. Panicked, she stumbles to the sink, scrubbing her hands raw, but the tooth is gone, only a faint, throbbing ache remains. Sheriff Silas Rook arrives, his presence immediately tense. He and Delia share a strained history, he's her ex-boyfriend, and their breakup was messy. Silas dismisses the trucker's death as a heart attack, but Delia notices the way he avoids looking at the teeth scattered on the floor. When she tries to tell him about the tooth in her palm, he cuts her off, warning her not to stir up trouble. After Silas leaves, Delia retreats to the diner's basement to clear her head. Among the boxes of old supplies, she finds her father's journal. The pages are filled with frantic scribbles about the Gravens, sacrifices, and a date, October 31st, 1994, the night her mother disappeared. The final entry reads, "They're coming for her. I can't stop them." Delia locks up the diner and steps outside into the cold night. As she walks to her car, she hears a faint scratching sound coming from beneath the diner. She crouches to look but sees nothing. Just as she stands, a hand grabs her ankle, cold and bony. She screams, kicking free, and runs to her car. As she drives away, she glances in the rearview mirror and sees a figure standing in the diner's doorway, its mouth too wide, its teeth too sharp. Delia Thorne waking up in the cramped apartment above the diner. The events of the previous night, the trucker's death, the burrowing tooth, the figure at the door linger like a bad dream. She examines her palm, where the tooth had burrowed, but finds only a faint, jagged scar. The scratching sound from beneath the diner is gone, replaced by an eerie silence. Delia steps outside to find the town of Hollowbrook bathed in an unnatural fog. The streets are empty, and the air smells faintly of rot. She notices a cluster of crows perched on the diner's roof, their beaks clicking as they watch her. Delia drives to the outskirts of town to buy supplies, passing barren fields and rusted farm equipment. She's flagged down by a group of panicked farmhands who lead her to a gruesome discovery, the body of Tommy Hargrove, a local farmer, lying in the middle of his cornfield. The corpse is hollowed out, its chest cavity filled with writhing insects and teeth. The cornstalks around him are bent and broken, as if something large had dragged him there. The farmhands whisper about bad luck and cursed soil, but Delia notices something worse, the corpse's lips are moving. Delia kneels beside the body, her heart pounding. The corpse's lips part, and a voice emerges, not Tommy's, but her father's. It whispers her name, "Delia, they're coming for you." Before she can react, the corpse collapses into a pile of teeth and insects, which scatter into the soil. The farmhands flee, leaving Delia alone in the field. She stares at the spot where the body had been, her father's voice echoing in her mind. Back at the diner, Delia pores over her father's journal, searching for answers. She finds a passage dated October 1994, the night her mother disappeared. The Gravens are hungry. They take from the soil, and the soil takes from us. Tommy came to me today, said he saw something in the fields. I told him to keep quiet, but he wouldn't listen. Now I hear them scratching at the door. Delia realizes Tommy Hargrove was one of the last people to see her father alive. Determined to learn more, Delia visits Imogen Holloway, the elderly widow who lives on the edge of town. Imogen's house is cluttered with jars of preserved vegetables and dusty trinkets, but Delia's attention is drawn to a framed photo on the wall, a group of townsfolk from the 1930s, including her great-grandfather. Imogen confirms Delia's suspicions. The town's founders made a pact with the Gravens to protect their wealth, offering human sacrifices every 30 years. She warns Delia that the curse is tied to the land itself, and that the soil remembers. As Delia leaves Imogen's house, she hears a faint scratching sound coming from the cornfield across the road. She approaches cautiously, her flashlight cutting through the fog. Suddenly, a figure lunges at her, a graven, its mouth a gaping maw of rotating teeth. Delia stumbles back, dropping her flashlight, and the creature retreats into the corn. She runs to her car, her heart racing, and notices something clutched in her hand, a human tooth, still warm. Delia returns to the diner, shaken but determined. She locks the doors and windows, but the scratching sound returns, louder this time. She crouches to look beneath the diner and sees something moving in the shadows, a pair of glowing eyes and a mouth full of teeth. As she backs away, she hears her father's voice again. "They're coming for you, Delia." Delia Thorne sitting at a corner booth in the diner, her father's journal spread out in front of her. The morning light filters through the dusty windows, illuminating the frantic scribbles and sketches that fill the pages. The journal feels heavy in her hands, not just from its physical weight but from the burden of its secrets. Delia flips to a page dated October 31st, 1994, the night her mother disappeared. The entry is brief but chilling. "They took her. I tried to stop them, but the soil was too hungry. Delia is next. I have to protect her." The words send a shiver down her spine. She notices a folded piece of paper tucked into the journal's spine and pulls it out. It's a photograph of herself as a child, standing in front of the diner. On the back, scrawled in her father's handwriting, are the words, "Next offering." That night, Delia is awakened by a noise coming from the apartment above the diner. She finds her niece, Larky, sleepwalking. Larky's eyes are open but unseeing, and she's whispering in a language Delia doesn't recognize. Delia tries to wake her, but Larky's skin is cold to the touch, and her breath smells faintly of soil. Larky suddenly stops and turns to Delia, her eyes black and glossy. She hisses, "They're hungry," before collapsing into Delia's arms. The next morning, Delia decides to investigate the diner's basement, hoping to find more clues. The basement is damp and cluttered, filled with old furniture and boxes of supplies. As she searches, she finds a hidden compartment in the wall. Inside is a small wooden box containing a locket and a stack of letters. The locket is engraved with her mother's initials, and inside is a lock of hair. The letters are addressed to her father, written in her mother's handwriting. One letter stands out. "I can hear them scratching at the door. They're coming for her, John. You have to get her out of here. Don't let them take Delia." Delia visits the town cemetery to find her mother's grave. The cemetery is overgrown and neglected, the headstones weathered and cracked. She finds her mother's grave, but something is wrong. The soil is freshly disturbed, and the headstone is cracked down the middle. As she kneels to examine the grave, she hears a faint scratching sound coming from beneath the soil. She digs with her hands, her heart pounding, and uncovers a cluster of human teeth arranged in a spiral pattern. Back at the diner, Delia examines the photo of herself as a child more closely. She notices something she hadn't seen before, a faint shadow in the background, just inside the diner's doorway. It looks like a figure, its mouth too wide, its teeth too sharp. Delia's hands tremble as she realizes the photo wasn't taken by her father. Someone or something else was watching her. That night, Delia is awakened by a scratching sound at her bedroom window. She pulls back the curtain and sees a figure standing outside, a graven, its mouth a gaping maw of rotating teeth. It presses a hand against the glass, leaving a smear of blackened soil. Delia backs away, her heart racing, and the figure disappears into the night. She looks down at her palm, where the tooth had burrowed, and notices the scar is throbbing. Delia Thorne's sitting at the diner counter, staring at the locket she found in the basement. The engraving, her mother's initials, feels like a lead weight in her hand. She opens it, revealing the lock of hair inside, and wonders why her father hid it. The throbbing scar on her palm pulses faintly, a constant reminder of the curse. Delia decides to visit Imogen Blackwell again, hoping the elderly woman can shed light on the locket and the photo of herself as a child. She leaves Larky in the care of a trusted waitress, promising to return soon. Imogen's house is dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of herbs and dust. The old woman sits in her rocking chair, her eyes sharp but weary. Delia shows her the locket and the photo, and Imogen's face darkens. "Your mother knew," Imogen says, her voice trembling. She knew what the town was hiding. The pact wasn't just about sacrifices, it was about bloodlines. The Gravens don't just take anyone. They take the descendants of the founders. Imogen explains that the town's founders made a pact with the Gravens to protect their wealth, offering one of their own every 30 years. The sacrifices weren't random, they were chosen based on their lineage. Delia's family, the Thornes, were one of the founding families. As Imogen speaks, the room grows colder, and the faint scratching sound from beneath the floorboards grows louder. Imogen's eyes widen in fear. "They're here," she whispers. Before Delia can react, the floorboards splinter, and a graven bursts through, its mouth a gaping maw of rotating teeth. Imogen shoves Delia out of the way, but the creature grabs her, dragging her into the hole. Imogen's hand shoots out, clutching the locket. "Take it," she gasps, pressing the locket into Delia's hand. "It's not just your mother's. It's hers now." Delia looks inside the locket and finds a child's tooth, Larky's. Delia stumbles out of the house, clutching the locket. She examines it more closely and notices something she hadn't seen before, a tiny engraving on the inside of the locket's clasp. "For Delia, my offering." The words send a chill down her spine. She realizes the locket wasn't just her mother's, it was meant for her. Her mother had tried to protect her, but the curse had other plans. Delia returns to the diner to find Sheriff Silas Rook waiting for her. He's visibly agitated, his hand resting on his holstered gun. "You need to stop digging into things you don't understand," he says, his voice low and threatening. "People are getting hurt. You're going to get someone killed." Delia confronts him about the pact and the sacrifices, but Silas denies everything. When she mentions the locket and Larky's tooth, his face pales. He storms out, leaving Delia more determined than ever to uncover the truth. That night, Delia is awakened by the sound of scratching at her bedroom window. She pulls back the curtain and sees a figure standing outside, a graven, its mouth a gaping maw of rotating teeth. It presses a hand against the glass, leaving a smear of blackened soil. Delia backs away, her heart racing, and the figure disappears into the night. She looks down at her palm, where the tooth had burrowed, and notices the scar is throbbing. Delia Thorne standing at the edge of the sinkhole near the diner, her flashlight cutting through the thick fog. The air smells of damp earth and decay, and the faint scratching sound from beneath the ground grows louder as she approaches. The sinkhole is jagged and deep, its walls lined with twisted roots and patches of blackened soil. Delia hesitates, her heart pounding, but the memory of Larky's tooth and the locket and Imogen's dying words drive her forward. She ties a rope to a nearby tree and begins her descent into the darkness. Delia reaches the bottom of the sinkhole and finds herself in a massive underground chamber. The walls are pulsating, covered in a thick, fleshy membrane that glistens in the beam of her flashlight. The air is thick with the stench of rot, and the ground is littered with human remains, bones, teeth, and scraps of clothing. As she moves deeper into the chamber, she notices strange, egg-like sacs embedded in the walls. They pulse faintly, as if something inside is alive. The scratching sound grows louder, echoing through the chamber. Delia's flashlight catches on a figure slumped against the wall, a graven, but unlike the others. Its body is half human, half insect, its face twisted in agony. As she approaches, the creature looks up, and Delia's breath catches in her throat. It's her father. His eyes are black and glossy, but there's a flicker of recognition in them. He reaches out a trembling hand, his voice a raspy whisper, "Delia, you were supposed to be the offering, not her." As Delia stares at her father, the scar on her palm begins to throb, and she's overcome by a vision. She sees her father in the diner's basement, frantically scribbling in his journal. Her mother is there too, pleading with him to stop. "They're coming for her, John. You have to get her out of here. Don't let them take Delia." Her father looks up, his face pale and drawn. "I can't stop them. The soil is too hungry." The vision ends abruptly, leaving Delia gasping for breath. Why It Works provides crucial backstory and ties Delia's family directly to the curse. The vision adds emotional weight and raises questions about her mother's role in the events. Delia's father suddenly convulses, his body twisting and contorting as the transformation completes. His mouth splits open, revealing rows of rotating teeth, and he lunges at her. Delia stumbles back, dropping her flashlight, and the chamber is plunged into darkness. She hears the sound of skittering feet and feels something brush against her leg. She scrambles to her feet and runs, her heart pounding, as the gravens close in around her. Delia reaches the rope and begins to climb, her hands slick with sweat. The gravens swarm beneath her, their mouths gaping and their teeth clicking. Just as she reaches the top, a hand grabs her ankle, and she looks down to see her father's face staring up at her, his eyes filled with sorrow. "I'm sorry, Delia," he whispers before letting go. Delia pulls herself out of the sinkhole and collapses on the ground, gasping for breath. She looks down at her palm, where the scar is throbbing, and notices something new, a faint, black vein spreading from the scar. Delia Thorne sitting in the diner's basement, staring at her palm. The black vein that appeared after her escape from the hive has spread, creeping up her wrist like a spider's web. It pulses faintly, a constant reminder of the curse. She feels a strange pull, as if the hive is calling to her. Larky sits nearby, her eyes distant and her hands clutching the locket Delia gave her. The girl hasn't spoken since the sleepwalking incident, but Delia notices her drawing again, this time, a spiral of teeth with a figure at the center. Delia confronts Sheriff Silas Rook at his office, determined to get answers. The room is cluttered with files and maps, and Silas looks exhausted, his face pale and drawn. Delia slams the locket on his desk, the child's tooth inside rattling ominously. "Tell me the truth," she demands. "What did my mother do?" Silas hesitates, his hand trembling as he reaches for the locket. Finally, he speaks. "Your mother wasn't a victim, Delia. She was the one who brokered the pact with the Gravens. She did it to save you." Silas explains that Delia's mother, Eleanor Thorne, was desperate to protect her daughter after Delia was marked as the next offering. Eleanor made a deal with the Gravens, she would become their queen, ensuring the town's safety, in exchange for Delia's life. She thought she could control them, Silas says, his voice bitter. But they took her anyway. She's down there, Delia. She's one of them. As Silas speaks, Delia is overcome by another vision. She sees her mother in the hive, her body half transformed and her eyes black and glossy. Eleanor reaches out to her, her voice a haunting whisper. "Delia, I did this for you. But the soil is too hungry. It's coming for you too. The vision ends abruptly, leaving Delia gasping for breath. Delia and Silas are interrupted by the sound of scratching at the door. Before they can react, a graven bursts through, its mouth a gaping maw of rotating teeth. Silas grabs his gun and fires, but the bullets only make the creature angrier. Delia grabs a fire extinguisher and smashes it into the graven's head, giving them a chance to escape. As they run, Delia notices something. The graven's eyes are familiar. They're her mother's. Back at the diner, Delia and Silas argue about what to do next. Silas wants to burn the hive, but Delia is hesitant. She knows her mother is down there, and part of her wants to save her. You can't save her, Delia, Silas says, his voice harsh. She's not your mother anymore. She's one of them. Delia looks down at her palm, where the black vein is spreading, and realizes she's running out of time. That night, Delia is awakened by the sound of scratching at her bedroom window. She pulls back the curtain and sees a figure standing outside, a graven, its mouth a gaping maw of rotating teeth. It presses a hand against the glass, leaving a smear of blackened soil. Delia backs away, her heart racing, and the figure disappears into the night. She looks down at her palm, where the black vein is spreading, and notices something new, a faint, glowing light beneath her skin. Delia Thorne staring at her palm in the dim light of the diner's basement. The black vein has spread further, now reaching her elbow, and the faint, glowing light beneath her skin pulses in time with her heartbeat. She feels a strange pull, as if the hive is calling to her, and the whispers of the gravens echo in her mind. Larky sits nearby, her eyes distant and her hands clutching the locket. The girl hasn't spoken in days, but Delia notices her drawing again, this time, a spiral of teeth with a figure at the center. The figure looks like Larky, but her mouth is too wide, her teeth too sharp. Delia meets with Sheriff Silas Rook and a small group of townsfolk who are willing to help. They plan to burn the hive, hoping to destroy the gravens once and for all. Silas is skeptical but agrees to help, knowing it's their only chance. Delia feels a pang of guilt as she looks at Larky, who sits quietly in the corner. She knows the girl is marked by the curse, but she can't bring herself to leave her behind. Delia, Silas, and the townsfolk descend into the sinkhole, their flashlights cutting through the thick darkness. The air is thick with the stench of rot, and the walls of the hive pulsate faintly, as if alive. The group moves cautiously, their footsteps echoing in the vast chamber. As they approach the center of the hive, they find a massive, fleshy mound covered in egg-like sacs. The sacs pulse faintly, and the scratching sound grows louder. Delia feels a strange pull, as if the mound is calling to her. As Delia prepares to set the mound on fire, Larky suddenly steps forward, her eyes black and glossy. Her teeth are sharp, and her skin is pale and cold. She speaks in a voice that is not her own. You can't destroy them, Aunt Delia. They're part of me now. I can control them. Delia is horrified, but part of her wants to believe Larky. She reaches out to the girl, but Larky steps back, her eyes filled with sorrow. Let me go, she whispers. I can save you. I can save everyone. Before Delia can respond, the mound bursts open, and the gravens swarm out, their mouths gaping and their teeth clicking. The townsfolk panic, firing their guns and swinging their weapons, but the creatures are too fast, too numerous. Delia grabs Larky and pulls her to safety, but the girl struggles, her eyes black and glossy. Let me go, she hisses. I can stop them. Delia is forced to make a choice, save Larky or destroy the gravens. She looks at the girl, her heart breaking, and then at the mound, pulsing faintly in the darkness. She makes her decision. Delia sets the mound on fire, the flames spreading quickly through the hive. The gravens screech and writhe, their bodies consumed by the flames. Delia grabs Larky and runs, the heat and smoke closing in around them. As they reach the surface, Delia looks back at the sinkhole, now filled with flames. She feels a pang of guilt, knowing she may have sacrificed Larky's soul to save the town. Delia Thorne standing in the diner, now rebuilt and bustling with life. Months have passed since the fire that destroyed the hive, and the town of Hollowbrook has begun to heal. The air smells of fresh paint and coffee, and the sound of laughter fills the room. Delia looks down at her palm, where the black vein has faded to a faint scar. She feels a sense of relief, believing the curse is finally broken. But as she turns to the window, she notices something strange. The soil outside is dark and wet, as if it's been freshly turned. That night, Delia is awakened by the sound of scratching at her door. She grabs a flashlight and approaches cautiously, her heart pounding. As she opens the door, she's met with a horrifying sight: Larky, fully transformed into a graven. The girl's eyes are black and glossy, her mouth a gaping maw of rotating teeth. But when she speaks, her voice is still Larky's. "Aunt Delia, they're still hungry." Delia follows Larky to the sinkhole, now sealed with concrete and steel. But the soil around it is freshly disturbed, and the faint scratching sound is louder than ever. Larky leads her to a hidden entrance, and they descend into the darkness. The hive is alive once more, the walls pulsating with a faint, sickly light. The air is thick with the stench of rot, and the ground is littered with human remains. Delia feels a strange pull, as if the hive is calling to her. As Delia moves deeper into the hive, she finds herself in a massive chamber filled with egg-like sacs. At the center of the chamber is a throne made of bones and teeth, and sitting on it is a figure, a graven queen. The queen's eyes are black and glossy, her mouth a gaping maw of rotating teeth. But when she speaks, her voice is hauntingly familiar. "Delia, you were always meant to be here." Delia realizes with horror that the queen is her mother, Eleanor Thorne. Eleanor explains that the curse is unbreakable, a cycle of sacrifice and rebirth. The gravens are part of the soil, and the soil remembers. She offers Delia a choice: join her as a graven queen or watch as the town is consumed. Delia looks at Larky, her heart breaking, and then at the throne, pulsing faintly in the darkness. She makes her decision. Delia returns to the diner, her body trembling and her mind racing. She looks in the mirror, expecting to see her own reflection. But instead, she sees a graven queen herself, transformed. The reflection moves independently, its eyes black and glossy, its mouth a gaping maw of rotating teeth. It speaks in a voice that is not her own. The soil remembers. Delia screams, but the sound is drowned out by the scratching at the door.